Employers of Reddit. What is something that an employee did that resulted in immediate termination due to sheer unprofessionalism? Was a manager at a sales call center. Girl would have 2 headsets on. One for work and the other for her unemployed GF that wanted to talk to her all the time to make sure she wasn't at work cheating on her. Funny thing is, she got fired for watching movie trailers on her computer, which was right in front of a security camera. She was watching the trailers so she could tell her girlfriend what movie she saw so she could go and cheat on her for 2 hours. When I was a manager in a call center in my late teens, I walked past a member of staff smoking weed with his mates outside the office. I wouldn't have minded. It was sort of the done thing in that place, but the thing was he'd called in sick that day, and when I walked past him he said that if I told anyone he'd frick me up. So I sacked him. Oh, easy. 10th grade teacher. Testing new hires in a classroom setting. Wednesday was a guy I already wasn't a big fan of. He spent a lot of time trying to be the cool guy who doesn't care, asking about how many vacation days he has and when he can take them in the days immediately following getting his job, making fun of the teachers who dress formally for their job. Newsflash bud, we have a dress code as well, and just a general nonchalance that was totally inappropriate. So this hire is having his classroom day, and he writes something on a piece of scrap paper and slides it onto a student's desk with his back turned, thinking I didn't see. I thought maybe he was trying to tell her something without embarrassing her, like maybe she had her fly down, had started her period, or even was just working from the wrong chapter of the book. I took him aside rather than calling him out in case that was the situation. I said, "What did you just hand to that student?" point blank. Without skipping a beat, my cell phone number. I walked right back in there and got the paper from the confused and uncomfortable looking girl to verify this, and sure enough, he had, with a smiley face. I asked him what gave him the nerve and he said, "Come on man, this is high school. You've been there, right? One look and you know she's way past puberty. If there's grass on the infield, play ball." We filed a police report and sent him packing. Worked at a daycare. Employee told 4-year-old get your hands off your pee in front of the district manager. She was fired on the spot and I had to rearrange staff for the rest of the day. At a dealership I was at, this really fat lady said the car seat was uncomfortable and the salesman said, "Well, they don't really make car seats for people of your carriage." He was immediately brought into the office and left that day. He was right, but you can't say that out loud to a customer. A good salesperson could spin that in their favor to sell a bigger car with more space. A guy went missing and an hour later a manager found him sleeping in his car with a bottle of liquor in one hand and his dong in the other. Hard liquor, soft dong. Not an employer. Had a new hire in our IT help desk on day 1, decided it was okay to take a 45-minute bathroom break, a 2-hour lunch break without informing his supervisor. Day 2, in the middle of training decides to break out a massive bowl of chili and beans and proceeds to eat it. Not a big deal I guess, but that's what breaks and lunch breaks are for. Next, in the middle of a phone support call with another technician talking to a user over a help desk ticket, he proceeds to fall asleep and begins snoring into the microphone with his trainer and the end user still on the call. Needless to say, there was no day 3. I was going to say day 1 seemed like there was a good chance it was just nerves, but day 2 he done fricked up. Had a member of my leadership tell multiple team members that she had to watch a video of her ex-BF jerking off so she could get wet enough to put a tampon in. Worked at a major corporation. Guy had his name title on his Facebook page. He proceeded to go on an extremely racist tirade in one of his Facebook statuses. He was fired the next day. My brother did something similar. Had a bad day at work, so he went on Facebook and posted a rant about killing his boss. Got fired the next day. He's not exactly the pride of the family. My second day as kitchen manager at a restaurant. Typically front of house firings would be the FO manager or Grams, but I was only manager on a slow night, and a table wanted a drink made and the server in question couldn't find the bartender. Thankfully one of the specialty drinks for our house so I could make it out of our book. Still can't find bartender. Another drink comes in half an hour later. Still no bartender. As I'm trying to mix the drink, I can't find our ale tequila, so I go get a new one and see our bartender coming out of the bathroom with her jacket on. Roll my eyes, tell her we're out of tequila. hand her the bottle and let her finish the drink. I, being naive and an optimist, just tell her we need to talk later, intending to lecture about long breaks. One of our servers is the daughter of the store owner and knows the password for the cameras. She checks them and sees the bartender take the tequila and go to the bathroom, where she apparently spent half an hour drinking tequila. Obviously fired on the spot, but if you're going to steal liquor from a restaurant, why would you take it from the rail? I was in the office with a guy who was on the phone with a new roommate. I heard the roommate ask if he wanted her to pick up some coffee or anything from the store. The guy said nah, I just take the coffee and filters from the office and bring them home. Did I mention I was the manager in charge of the office? Amazing what I found out about what he pulled off during his 2 months with us. That is oddly specific to ask on the phone, and specifically stupid to comment on at work. Also, if you get the free coffee taken away like that, heck hath no fury strong enough. Left work one day without permission to go kill his wife. You need permission to leave work to kill your wife. Totally unprofessional. Taught at a school for troubled kids, basically teenagers with very adult crimes on their records already. Kid leaves the ground for lunch and then proceeds to show up to my class 30 minutes late. We found out the next day he had went and robbed a local convenience store and killed the clerk with his bare hands. He was fired from class. New hire was there less than a week. The owner came in to give us a rundown of a big new project we were starting. New guy kept talking. Owner told him to shut the frick up. As soon as we were sent on our way, new guy starts talking crap about the owner, saying he should meet him in the parking lot to fight. Owner called him right back in and fired him on the spot. I was a manager at a software company and was in an email thread, or maybe it was instant messaging. I don't remember. Instant messaging, I think. This was many years ago now. There was a technical issue going on. 3 of us were involved. I was overseeing it, and we had 2 technical operations guys who were working it. One of these guys had been having some serious pain issues, and he was home on some fairly serious pain medication, I think, but not so serious that it was an excuse for what happened, as it turned out. Ultimately, he started basically bullying the other guy, calling him names, making fun of his weight, cursing at him, etc. I told him to cuss it out, that he was way out of line, and then something weird happened. To sort of give him an out, and to maybe make the other guy feel less offended by it, I reminded him that this guy was at home and on some pretty aggressive pain meds, and he probably didn't know what he was saying. So to please forgive him and we could talk about it later. Then the guy said, no, I know exactly what I'm saying, and then he continued to berate him. Well, that was pretty easy from there. I took a screenshot of the messages and sent them to his boss. The developers worked for me, but he didn't. I had a conversation with that boss the next morning and the guy was fired by lunchtime. He didn't even fight it. He knew that he was nailed, and he didn't blame me for what I had done. He completely rolled over on the whole thing, and I never heard from him again. I managed the sales floor of a call center for a couple of years in my early 20s. I didn't stick with it because, as it turns out, I really don't like reprimanding firing people. I only fired someone 3 times. Employee 1 somehow managed to slide by on the background check to get hired. After his 2nd month there, he lets me know that he is going to need some time off to deal with legal matters. Those legal matters involved child abuse, sexual offenses that he facilitated involving an outside party and his very young and mentally handicapped son. The freaking court case was all over the internet and everything. Obviously, fired. I had a field day reaming HR over that one. Employee 2 couldn't figure out how to mute her headset. One incident involved her having a discussion with her friend cubicle neighbor about how drunk they had gotten the night before, while a customer was listening. Fortunately, customer thought it was hilarious. I let it go. Second incident was a different story. She said some pretty racist crap about a customer with an accent that the customer heard. Not funny, not acceptable. After I got a complaint, reviewed the call with QA, I fired her mid-shift. Employee 3 drove into the parking lot drunk as frick and hit another employee's car. Obviously, my hands are kinda tied there. Red Lobster. Lady went through like 7 days of training. First night on the floor was Saturday night. She had $600 cash on her, and at 7:30, right in the rush, She walked out the door and went straight to the crack house. The police found her there and arrested her and took her to jail. Me. One of our interns was walked out because he was on the phone in the hallway loudly cursing. The SVP walked by and politely told him to take it into a conference room because some customers from other companies were visiting the office, and that his conversation was too loud. The intern turned on the SVP and said, "Frick this crap. Mind your business." Yep, he literally didn't even have time to pack his desk before he was out of the building. Dude was like straight out of college and I think it was his first internship. Guess he learned an important lesson that day. I'm not an employer, but I recently got a job where another dude who started the same day as me got fired on his second day. Basically he was looking through a bunch of boxes and fricking with the cameras and equipment in the cage that is, from what I can glean, reserved mostly for field reporters and such. When asked about it, he didn't have a good answer as to why he was doing it, just that no one told him he couldn't. But it was basically a lack of common sense. All that expensive crap was locked in a metal cage for a reason. Someone had left it unlocked clearly by accident, and he went snooping. More on cold or broken something. He was planning to steal. Guaranteed. Not an employer, but a co-worker of mine was fired on the spot. We were blackjack dealers at a casino, and it was his last day. He had put in his 2 weeks notice, and was planning on moving out to California to become an actor. He had players on his table, and he started being an butthole and talking crap to them. The players were upset of course, and said, "You can't talk to us like that." He responded, "I can say whatever the frick I want to you. It's my last day." He only had about 3 hours left in his final shift, but they fired him on the spot and security escorted him off property. And then Bradley Cooper left the casino and never looked back. Trainer supervisor at a call center ages ago. Had a new hire who just wasn't getting it but was so polite no one wanted to call her out. Handed her off to me for a retraining. Within 30 seconds I realized she was illiterate. I don't mean not grad school material. I mean doesn't know what the squiggly things on the page are illiterate. I asked her to read something and she finally told me she couldn't. I asked her why she thought she could get away with this and she basically said that she showed up and should get paid for showing up. She was escorted out a few minutes later. That's very sad. I had a co-worker just leave in the middle of her shift because her friend's boyfriend broke up with her and she really needs me right now. Good friend, ex-co-worker. This really isn't the worst thing, but at least say you have a family emergency or something. Kid I managed decided to post all over social media to throw a giant pool party at my place of work. There were almost 300 people that showed up to our pool that day. Safe to say, he was fired on the spot. Was a store manager for one of the US biggest party supply store chains. Had a seasonal employee who was supposed to open with me. Can't go into the store unless there's one other person with me, but decided to text my cell phone calling out saying she was sick and stuck in bed. She was sitting in her car on the side of the store, and I could see where she was parked from the front door. This wasn't her first time calling out, so it was grounds for terming her. It was the best conversation I've ever had firing someone. One of my fellow employees kept saying the N-word around one of our black co-workers. He was terminated because of this and his general stupid behavior. The worst part was he didn't see anything wrong with it. Like seriously dude. One assistant manager I worked with was getting teased by younger employees about her figure and age. To prove she still had it, she set up a phone in her office and told the employees mocking her to go in and hit play. It was a video of her masturbating to the camera. She was given the choice of being fired and never allowed to work in that chain again, or getting reported to the police because the younger employees were minors. To be honest, seems like the young employees need a talking to as well. Professional environment and all that. To be clear though, the masturbating woman was absolutely in the wrong and she's dang lucky you didn't report that. Showed up to work late, was extremely hungover, then proceeded to crap themselves while on the sales floor with a customer. If this isn't the best price, I'll crap myself. This story comes via my wife who works in workers' compensation. 1. The worker climbed a tower in an area he was not authorized to be in. 2. Climbed to a height he was not qualified to work at. 3. Wore a safety harness but did not connect it to anything. 4. Took a selfie and posted it to his Facebook. He was immediately terminated when the photographic evidence proving all this came to light. The pity is, he was apparently a really good worker, and had he only done 1 and 2 he would have been warned. But failing to connect the harness is where he crossed the line, and taking a photo of it was not only reckless, but destroyed any chance of plausible deniability. For the record, there was no workers' compensation claim arising from the incident. The workers' comp claim was due to an unrelated injury to the worker's hand that occurred prior. He didn't put in a claim at first because his injury didn't preclude him from his pre-injury duties, but when he got terminated he assumed he would be eligible for compensation because, according to him, his injury was preventing him from finding another job. Unfortunately, because it was his stupidity and not his injury that prevented him from working, he isn't eligible for benefits. One of the sushi chefs at the restaurant I worked at got caught selling weed to customers while working. The owner that caught him decided to not get the cops involved and just fired him, which I thought was nice of her. I used to work at a hardware store that hired a lot of high school students for after school and weekend shifts. A new student was up on a ladder to dust cobwebs, but without a spotter at the bottom of the ladder. Store owner approaches him and tells him he's being unsafe and needs a spotter. New hire insists that he knows what he's doing and won't get hurt. Store owner reiterates what he just said about safety, and the new hire doubles down on insisting that he knows what he's doing and literally says, "What are you gonna do? Fire me?" The store owner said okay, sounds good, and fired him. AK-47 in trunk of company car. It was found after it was towed from a red zone and the company owner had to pick up the car from impound. Oh, crap, I have a great story to share. I used to work on a Navy aviation base in Supply. We had truck drivers who drove big rigs and yard dogs pulling long trailers all over the flight lines to the hangars of various helicopter squadrons. One dip crap racist butthole parked his rig in front of a hangar and didn't set the parking brake. He walked into the hangar, grabbed a forklift and unloaded a pallet of chem wipes or something and just barely tapped the trailer as he offloaded the pallet. The truck started rolling very slowly and the guy tried to chase it down with the forklift. The truck got up to about 20 miles per hour. If he'd run after it he may have saved the day, and it smashed into an MH-60 Seahawk Hello, causing enough damage to have to condemn the airframe. That's a bingo. Oops. Now that's an expensive mistake. A young girl who started working with me at a popular UK retailer, let's call it Besco. Anyhow, when she was working the checkouts, any customers that didn't have or use a club card, she scanned hers to get the points throughout her shift. This was obviously flagged by the system officer who rang our store to ask about the unusual activity on said girl's club card. It took all of 5 minutes to figure out that she was employed at our store and was accumulating a massive amount of points to her account. These points have actual monetary value as you get posted the vouchers every few months to spend on whatever you like. Plus, if you're an employee you can also use your 10% discount plus colleague offers all combined. Anyway, yeah, fired on the spot. She was actually very kindly given a chance to resign immediately rather than be fired for fraud. Super freaking dumbest thing I've ever witnessed in employment. A teacher wrote WTF on a student's essay. It was his first week working at the school. God knows what he thought would happen. Me coming into this thread. Oh god, I bet I'm going to read I'm doing something on this list. What am I doing having a real job? Me after reading through this thread. I am a relatively competent adult, I guess. When I was in law school I paid bills by managing a liquor store. I got a call from a friend who had been in that store on my day off saying that it reeked of weed. Decided to drive in and see what's up. Sure enough, it smells like a grow operation. I walk into the beer cooler and the employee is taking bong rips. I was like, what the frick are you doing? He looks up all surprised and was like, no joke, chill man, there are fans in here. It took a second for it to register, but when it did I replied, this is a beer cooler not a stove, you fricking idiot. Those fans blow in, not out. He was fired on the spot and never saw him again. A guy was sitting in the break room, and an assistant store manager bends over in front of him so she can put something on an announcement board. This guy moves his face behind her, sniffs the air loudly, and she starts to back up as she is startled by the noise. She bumps his face with her bum, screams and starts running. She calls the store manager. They get the video of it and he got fired that day. Username checks out. It was you. Guy showed up an hour late on his second day. Cut him some slack. He was just a kid out of high school. Promises never to do it again. Next day, over 2 hours late. Didn't even let him walk in the door. Great of you for cutting him some slack the first time. I had someone last 3 weeks. I fired him after hearing that he pee in the middle of the customer's yard in broad daylight. Such a dumbass. When I was an employee at a movie theater, the projection manager somehow got a grill onto the roof and started cooking. Customers started smelling gas and smoke and told the floor managers. The fire department and police show up. Manager gets fired and gets to go home with his dad, the officer who showed up. Guy I worked with in cell phone customer service would tell customers things in a very blunt way, such as okay, so you made a payment arrangement, didn't pay it, we sent you 3 texts saying your service would be shut off and you're surprised that it's been turned off? What did you think would happen? He walked himself out. This guy is what every customer service agent wishes they could be. Obligatory. I'm not an employer but a manager. We had a line cook who was an ex-gang member. Lots of gang tattoos. Spent weekends in the drunk tank. Normal crappy line cook stuff. One day he saunters into work with a backpack, reeking of weed and liquor, not in uniform, and under the influence of probably like 4 different drugs. First time he came in with a backpack, I should note. Works the line for 10 minutes, freaking up like 4 orders. Then goes and takes a 10-hour back dock, has a door for mail orders and UPS and stuff. I went out for a smoke to ask him what was up with him today, and found him sitting out back in full daylight, and in full view of the parking lot, spilling a crack pipe. I walked over to him to tell him off and tell him to pack his crap up and leave for the day. Then I noticed the 2 15-year-olds sitting next to him, waiting their turn. He freaked out, begging me to not call the cops and to let him finish his shift. I told him first off we are a drug-free, or at least don't bring your crap to work, restaurant. He broke the rules and I had to let him go. Second off, dealing out of the restaurant to minors is obviously immoral and illegal as heck. Third, this had been his last warning, as he had come in a few times completely crap-faced. He started crying, begging me to not fire him. I told him I would bring his bag out to him, and he had to go. Went inside then came back out to give him his bag, only to find him getting arrested. Someone saw everything in the parking lot and called the cops. He looked at me with puppy eyes, and shook his head as hard as he could, basically begging me without words to not give the cops the bag. I just handed the bag to the cops, said it was his, then turned to him and said you reap what you sow. Hope everything works out eventually. This was about 2 years ago. I've heard he got out recently and has turned his life around. Whoa, hopefully that incident was the catalyst to him turning his life around. Not an employer myself, but my mom had to fire one of her employees because they ranted about the company on Facebook. If you don't want your boss seeing it, don't freaking post it. I work in a smallish food plant. Our busy season is during the summer, so we hire a lot of part-timers. We had 2 that where a couple apply and got the job together. Anyways, midsummer rolls around and it's a very nice day out, so we are working at full capacity. This usually means that a lot of our workers are doing overtime to keep up with our demand. These 2 call in together and say they were not coming in, taking a sick day. This was a half hour before our shift started, by the way. The supervisor that answered the phone was like, if there any way to change their minds, we are working full out and really need you in. Their response was, it's a nice day, we are going to the beach. They were fired the next day. Guy actually wasn't in my department, but him and another guy got into a shouting match about work stuff in the middle of the day. One guy was a Cav Scout, combat arms in the army or something a few years back, and the other guy was in communications or some crap. Appropriately, the scout was like 6 feet 1 inches 240 and this other guy was like 5 feet 9 inches 160. Anyhow, somehow the lil fella started talking all this crazy bulls about killing people and dead bodies and all this other nonsense about how he was gonna do X, and so on. I don't think he knew that the bigger dude had actually opened up on people before. Anyway, they both got suspended pending further review. The lil guy then sent a bunch of text messages to that department's head calling him a cocksucker and spineless and a crap manager for suspending him. and how he better not cross paths with him in the future, etc. It was a bizarre 24 hours. Just 2 weeks ago I received word that at our other office, one of my staff was walking around in her bra asking for a massage as a joke. She asked several of her male employees. The thing that got me mad, apart from the obvious, is that the same woman made sexual harassment allegations against her male colleagues. Upon investigating the allegations myself, I discovered that not only were these allegations unfounded, but she was the one touching and harassing her colleagues, tried to motorboat one of them, again, jokingly. Crazy B should be charged with sexual harassment. I sent a temp home for eating when he should have been working. The guy came in 30 minutes late. I sent him to clean some windows in an office. After not hearing from him for an hour, I went to check on him. He wasn't in the office and he did a crappy job on the windows. I called his phone and got no response. I look around the building for him for about 15 minutes and couldn't find him. I call him again and he answers saying that he's at the diner, in building. I go to the diner and see him licking his fingers and chicken bones on his plate while he's putting the rest in a to-go container. I sent him home. He tried to appeal to my manager who was there, but the manager said what I say goes. I explained to him that maybe he might not want to sit down and eat 2 hours after getting to work, especially on his second day on the job. Reddit. I'm not joking. I need to get fired. In 1 day. Guaranteed. I am hooked to an employment contract with my current job that says that if I voluntarily leave the job within my first 12 months of working there, I must pay them $XXXXXX. Big money for the fees and expenses that they've incurred related to hiring me. Similarly, it states that if I take them to court, they have the right to collect all court fees from me, and now I've received a much better job offer that I can't refuse. So now it seems that the only way out without paying is to involuntarily quit my job. You must help me get fired. I'm not even joking. I need a solid, surefire way to get fired on 1 day's notice. Guaranteed. Now, before you start spouting epic ideas, you need to know that this place does not fire anyone, ever. It is littered with incompetence and the Dunning-Kruger effect. They've fired maybe 1-2 people and it took months of their gross incompetence for it to happen. It will take a very special effort to get fired. And the only catch, I want to keep my dignity and hopefully not damage my professional reputation too badly, i.e., I'm not going to show up to work naked. Related facts. I work in IT. I do not want to destroy anything in any way which I could be found liable. Thanks in advance. Dance naked on the front desk in front of clients. It's the only way I've ever worked out to get fired while still performing in your job. There's no possible way that getting fired for incompetence, negligence, insubordination, etc. does not trigger the payback clause. Unless that is the dumbest company in the world. If it is, just hire a monkey to go pretend to be you while you take the fat job. They'll work for bananas. I know of a few people who have been in the exact same situation you're in. This may sound odd, but honestly your best bet would be to ask your direct report to fire you. This has worked for multiple people I know. People are more understanding than you would imagine, and if you go to your supervisor or manager and explain your situation, she might surprise you with understanding. Also, it wouldn't hurt to do something nice for him or her in the wake of this favor. For example, offer to help train your replacements for free from your new job. Perhaps give your cell and personal email so they can contact you with some help. If I were your manager and you came to me reasonably and like an adult and said that you need this for your own personal growth and you'd like to make the transition of you leaving as easy on me and the company as possible, I would have absolutely no problem helping you out. You make me sick. That is so freaking mature. If, as you say, this place does not readily fire someone, then it will take epic effort to get fired in 1 day. Guaranteed. However, if it takes epic effort, then chances are it will affect your future employment potential. This will take a delicate balancing act and lots of luck. I can offer you nothing. Don't worry about future employment. This is a write-off. Years back I worked with a guy at a consulting company. The same type of place. Very difficult to get fired. Well, he just stopped showing up. He would answer his phone and schedule meetings, accept other meetings, and just not show. He collected a paycheck for 8 months before he was fired, and the entire time he was working for a competitor, collecting 2 paychecks. It was a pretty badass way to do it. You will lose your dignity with this one. 1. Turn up to work dressed as a woman. Seriously. 2. Everyone will stare and make fun. 3. Make a complaint that the workplace doesn't accept your sexual gender preferences. 4. Capture defamatory emails. Use as evidence. 4. Blackmail HR that you will sue unless an agreement for you to leave is met. I was hesitant in posting this suggestion, but after reading the other suggestions, this one isn't so stupid. They have a dignity corset that can tighten that right up. If your company has a battery of lawyers, which I am sure they do, there is bound to be some stipulation in tiny print somewhere that you signed that will prevent you from using this loophole. Be careful. Just call out sick every day until they fire you, but whatever you do, tell them you plan on coming back as soon as you're better. Yay. I say this is the best option. Step 1. Take other job. Step 2. Just stop showing up at your old job. Step 3. Collect 2 paychecks for as long as you can. Step 4. Profit. Start on a subject you know your boss will disagree on. When the boss postures his her point, scream, "You're an overpaid idiot." Be loud and dramatic when you scream. The only way to get fired in a day is for cause that taints your future career. You can get fired, but if you're in the kind of place you are, they're not going to do that for just being an butthole. They're going to think you fit in if it's just that. To get fired, you're going to need to go way beyond what you would do over a course of weeks, months to establish incompetence. To get fired in a day, pee off the right person, someone in HR, but you've got to absolutely explode in their face, preferably in the presence of customers. Other than assault, breaking stuff, theft, getting fired in a day in an organization with a big administrative wing, not a chance. And keep your dignity too? Are you one of the people who buys a 1 Super Bowl ticket and fully expects to win? What possible fees and expenses could they have incurred for hiring a server monkey? And I say that with all affection. I love the guy in the server room. The much better job is not good enough for you to eat the fees associated with hiring you. If that job is really what you want, if you absolutely have to have it, tell your boss, "Thank you for the opportunity, but I've got an offer I cannot possibly refuse. I resign. Have a good day." That's dignity. That doesn't avoid the cost. It does avoid questions on your resume. It avoids criminal and civil liability. Other than the fees, you could bring a shotgun and put it on your desk. But then you're never sure somebody won't be calling the SWAT team that's not going to take a risk with some butthole brandishing a gun. They will shoot you as soon as look at you. Just walk. Eat the fees. Place a copy of the Victoria's Secret catalog on your boss desk. Make sure that each model's face is replaced with your photos of your boss. Write your name and phone number on the front cover. On top of the catalog, place a diseased pigeon carcass impaled with a cocktail stick. On the top of the cocktail stick, impale a small square of their most disliked cheese. Oh my god, is that a bird freaking staked on that skewer end? Ugh, Swiss. I am assuming you are here on a H-1B visa. The agreement you talk about is what is called as bond in H-1B body shop parlance. The company cannot demand the money from you if you quit because H-1B visa is not indentured labor. I suggest you go to your local labor debt office and discuss this issue. I will search later on and give you links to cases where H-1B visa holders face similar situation and went to court and won. United States labor debt law does not allow for indentured labor. H-1B visa is for getting skilled individuals from abroad, and the only condition which the labor debt puts is that they pay the wages as per the wage guidelines for H-1B. The minimum salary is $45K, so don't panic and don't believe the validity of that employment agreement. Go to the labor department. They are nice people. I know from experience. Talk to them. Show them your employment agreement. Profess love for boss. Say you're unable to be there without being with him. Assuming him, hopefully he will be so uncomfortable but weirdly flattered that he will allow you free exit. Short of an office master bash, and I can't think of anything. If no one gets fired, how can you expect without showing some dong? This is why it takes creativity. You work in IT, so I assume they have a big server rack somewhere. Disassemble that thing right down to the last nut and bolt and refuse to put it back together. If that fails, take a 10x dose of laxatives and redecorate your cube. My god. No way, that's called extortion, and can get you in more trouble than you even want to think about. Approach your boss and tell him the situation, then offer him half of $XXXXX if he fires you. That way you get out of the job right away, and you only pay half the fee, and the boss gets some easy money. Win-win. That's the best idea yet, and if he refuses, kiss him. Full on the mouth. I know someone who had a similar situation. He hated his job and wanted out, and this is what they did. He went into work and asked for a meeting with his boss. Told the boss that he was very unhappy, had issues with his co-workers, and basically talked down the place until the boss said, "If you are that unhappy, you should leave." Once he got that from the boss, he said that he understood where the boss was coming from and he appreciated him listening to his issues and thanked him and left. He went back to his desk, packed up everything and walked out with a box of his stuff, stopping by someone's cube and said that it was nice working with you and that he just got fired. Later that day the boss finally got wind that he fired the guy and called him up and didn't understand what was going on. The guy said, "You told me I should leave," and brought up other parts of the conversation that made it sound like the boss hoped that things worked out for him in the future. The boss said it was a huge misunderstanding and wanted him to come back, and the guy kept saying, "But you fired me." The company did fight his unemployment, but the guy hired an employment lawyer and one call from the lawyer got them to back down. Lots of bosses in that position won't say this. Why not do the honorable thing and quit? Talk to HR to work out a payment plan. With your much better offer, repayment should not be an issue. You should also know that their employment contract is airtight. Answers from Reddit have some gaping holes. Just do the right thing and get on up the road. Office space. Install StarCraft 2 and start playing. W speakers on loud, of course. Order pizza and beer. Have them ask the front desk for the money. Refuse to do any work saying, "I don't really feel like it, Bob." Ask them to get you some coffee as they stare at you. After an hour of SC2, some pee is needed on high volume. If that's not enough, bring in a friend to play SC2 with you next day. Breach of contract. Company will sue for non-performance and request liquidated damages be paid. Come and drunk as you can possibly get. Just be really loud. And don't stop. Don't touch anything. Just get really freaking loud. Proclaim your drunkenness, show up really late. Wear a dress. Wear sandals and socks. Nothing else. Right. So this company spent some money hiring you on a visa and you willingly signed a legal contract saying that you agreed to pay that if you left before some date. Now that you are in the country, you have a better job offer lined up and you want to ditch this job and switch to the other. So the answer is to resign the job and pay the forfeiture that you voluntarily agreed to by signing a valid legal contract. Anything other than this that you want to do merely propagates an unfair stereotype that foreign workers are deceptive, lying sacks of crap that don't follow through with the promises they have made and contracts they have signed. Okay, I am sorry, and from past experience, I fully expect to get downvoted, but here it goes anyway. Whatever happened to morals, ethics, etc., no matter what they are doing to you, or any of that, you agreed to it, even if they did not live up to their end. It is no reason for you to lower yourself. Be a stand-up guy. If it were me, I would go to the company that wants to hire you, and explain your situation. If they really want you, they will work with you. They might even pay your fee for you, or some part of it. Once you have left your present employer, you need to contact a lawyer and see what can be done. While you are still there, you should also document the things you are saying here. In fact, you may want to contact a lawyer first. He/she may help advise you on what documentation you will need. The bottom line is, be ethical. Just because the company you work for may not be, doesn't mean you should act in kind. I get so tired of hearing, "They did it to me first." So please set the right example for others to follow. I hope that everything works out for you the way you want it to. It sounds like maybe you got a raw deal. One last suggestion. I hope this teaches you to research future possible employers better. 1. Reply all. 2. Attach P screenshot with boss face photoshopped in and witty cartoon speech bubbles. 3. 4. Profit. Call in sick and accept the other job offer. Keep calling in sick at this crappy job till they ask you to come in to pick up your personal possessions. I must pay them $XXXXXX. Big money for the fees and expenses that they've incurred related to hiring me. That doesn't sound right. You should check that contract with a labor attorney. If they paid for outside training or your MBA or something, this would be quite common. I've never heard of charging an employee for the costs of hiring them though. I doubt that is legal. If that clause is in there and legal, my guess is that getting fired for cause is going to trigger the payback as well. Most likely you will need to get laid off. Sexually harass the frick out of your boss. If they don't bite, sexually harass the frick out of their boss. Keep going up the ladder until you're dry humping the CEO while he gives a speech to the stockholders. Bad idea. Sexual harassment can end in a lawsuit. I'm laughing my butt off at the last one though. Call your boss a dong to his face. Have a friendly acquaintance good actor at work tell on you for something. Have them be really pissy and melodramatic about it. Ironix called me a douche and I want him to get fired. Then just be like, yeah well, he was being a douche at the time when confronted. Find out your boss fear. Use it to your advantage. I.e., bossman is afraid of spiders. Leave a rubber spider in his seat. Or better, a real spider. Pass out obnoxious propaganda of your choice. Christian pamphlets are usually a good choice for incurring rage. Be as self-righteous and as smug as you possibly can. Condemn people to burn for all eternity. Drunk email defaming every aspect of the company. Tomorrow you can send a retraction, but if your apology doesn't cover the lengths to which you insult the company, its direction, its leaders, your bosses, your co-workers and every aspect of it, you should be fine to go. A buddy of mine was in a situation similar to this. He chose a female that worked there that was kind of high in the ranks. Got her phone number from the directory, then blew her phone up with texts and voicemails regarding how they should hang out on a non-professional basis. How beautiful she was. Just wanted to see what she was doing. etc. Got fired within 4 days. The good thing about this is if it backfires and the person is interested in you, you tell their superior you felt your job was in danger if you didn't go along with the relationship. A severance package or something is sure to come your way. Yeah, until the person reports you for sexual harassment, or shows that you initiated it all, thus exposing the fact you are trying to cheat the company out of money. Watch gay pee on the job and then turn the sound up as high as possible. If they ask you to turn it off, just ignore them. Do nothing else all day, or if pee is not an option, bring an instrument or something into work. Play out of tune all day while singing loudly. Especially if you can't actually play the instrument. If the name of your boss is Joe, go up to him and say, "Hey Joe, I wrote you a song," and then hit random frets and strum as fast as you can while yelling "Joe Joe Joe oh no" over and over again. Bonus points if he's in a meeting or on an important phone call. Just stand in front of whoever has the authority to fire you and stand around playing with a yo-yo. Surely after an hour or so of playing with the single most awesome toy on earth, that person will either tell you to get to work, or ask if he might try playing with your awesome yo. Either way tell them no and that you're not gonna quit playing with it until you can do around the world like 30 times in a row. And, the best part is, you get to play with a yo-yo for an hour. I'm sorry this isn't more creative, but you need to pick a fight with your boss. Not a physical altercation, but over some, preferably office related, topic. Escalate it, don't let it go. I guess you could also do the old mass email forward thing and accidentally send it to your boss as well as everyone else. Try making fun of your boss, criticizing his/her leadership abilities or making fun of his kid's wife dog. Destroy something in the office, not a server, or anything truly valuable, but maybe yours or a co-worker's computer. Pour water on it, then laugh about it and refuse to accept responsibility. Bring your dog to work. If you don't have a dog, a friend's dog. When your boss tells you you're not allowed to have your dog there, turn it into a big argument, and never back down. Show up to work chomping cigars. Blow smoke in everyone's faces. Start rolling around on the floor and refuse to get up until they give you a $10 K raise. Bring a monkey to work as well. Strap him into your chair. Say that the monkey is you, and you are, in fact, the monkey. Show up early every morning, log into your computer, send one email, leave for other job, sooner or later they will fire you. Okay, this absolutely worked for a guy I know, a long time ago in a land far, far away. 1. Go out at lunchtime and possibly have a few drinks. 2. Buy a couple of Super Soaker water pistols, and fill them. 3. Turn up back at the office with your tie around your head Rambo style and your business pants rolled up to the knees. 4. Try frantically to get somebody else to take the other water gun and to play at running around the office shooting each other. 5. When nobody will join in your game, then use both water pistols to soak whoever is still silly enough to be standing around, particularly targeting managers. 6. Profit. Some very minor poetic license involved in the retelling. PS. Hi Aspen, if you happen to ever read this, Slade. I just realized that I have hearsay evidence from the executive team's personal accountant of illegal tax sheltering and a pre-tax scam they're pulling. Perhaps I could just meet with the CHR, explain that I'm hip to their game, and agree to SFU in exchange for $0 quit. Do not do this. This would be a crime known as blackmail, even though you are blackmailing them about criminal activity. If you want to turn them in, fine. What you cannot do is use this knowledge to gain leverage over them like you describe. Here is the honorable way out. 1. Ask yourself, is my new job worth $XXX? 2. If it is, then quit. You have the right to do this. 3. They are going to probably say, okay, now you owe $XXX, which is true. 4. You say, I am broke, but I will make you a deal, then either work out a negotiated amount or an installment plan. 5. Go work at your new job and pay off your debts knowing that you did not take any unethical or criminal actions in getting this new dream job. Frick you dude. A company goes on a limb and gets you a visa and all they ask in return is your loyalty for 12 months. Or failing that, the $4,000 they spent on lawyers for you. Be a man and resign, paying them the money back or stick it out for 12 months. Life isn't just about looking out for number one. It's about honor and loyalty and many other things that don't always benefit your hip pocket. They didn't get me a visa. I am not sponsored. Managers of Reddit, what made you fire an employee on their first day? We hired an external supervisor. On orientation day, he was an hour late from lunch. He checked in, said sorry I'm late, then proceeds to inform me he was going to the restroom. He had a 72-minute poop. We decided he was a poor fit for our corporate culture. He had a 72-minute poop. I know the thing is to poop at work cause the boss makes $1 while you make a dime. But the idea isn't to stay in there until you have made as many dollars as the boss earns during his normal length poo. Not a manager, but on this woman's first day she was clearly very stressed and not getting the responsibilities. She went to lunch and never came back. My boss called her and fired her, but it was clear she ghosted without even quitting. At a different job, this guy came to work on his third day in jeans and a hoodie. We were business casual, but not that casual. An hour and he said he forgot something in his car and never came back. Same deal. Fired for job abandonment. She arrived 2.5 hours late. I had to wake her up because she forgot to set her alarm. She arrived high to work. To top it off, she sexually harassed a co-worker by asking her for a naked photo. She was out of a job by the end of the day. A fresh graduate who reported directly to me said to me in the most condescending tone ever, "It's important to understand stereotypes. For example, Spanish people are very lazy, so they are never going to work as hard and we have to understand it and treat them that way." Note, I, his boss, am Spanish. I have been a fast food manager a long time, so I have hired and fired a ton of people. Guy within 90 minutes of starting just started eating food off the cook's line. I walked around the corner, he just looks at me and takes a bite out of a chicken strip. I am not a big yeller, but I straight up ejected that dude like a baseball umpire. That's it, you're outta here. And this is why I could never have that job. I wasn't a manager, but a supervisor at the time. Dude's second day on the job. He called in running late from his bartending job. Shows up at the job. Grocery store third shift. So amazingly drunk that he could barely stand. He was upstairs in the bathroom shirtless and covered in puke. I called a co-worker in to help me convince him to get a ride home. He refused to get a ride. He kept saying how he's got a kid for about 30 minutes. I finally told him if he doesn't get a ride home immediately with my co-worker, then I'm calling the cops. My co-worker apparently held him back from fighting me in the parking lot. The guy still holds a grudge against me. Oh yeah, not only was he going to drive home, but on a moped. Frick that guy. Semi-NSW. Not first day, but first day without a trainer accompanying them. He managed crash a patrol car. That alone wouldn't necessarily have gotten them fired. The fact that it was into a school bus might not have done it if there were extenuating circumstances, since damage really was minor and no injuries sustained by anyone on the bus. The fact his girlfriend was in the squad car might not have done it if he had bothered to get permission. However, since there was no permission, we moved from might not to probably so. The fact that both the interior and exterior dashcam managed to accidentally get turned off, almost impossible to do by accident, but his body cam managed to, most likely, accidentally getting turned on though, guaranteed it. The only footage taken from that cam that night was of the top of his girlfriend's head rapidly and repeatedly entering and exiting the camera's field of vision. So close that you could see details that usually you'd never be able to see on a person's scalp, right up until impact caused the lens to shatter against her hair tie. The pictures some of the kids on the bus managed to get were just the icing on the cake at that point. Needless to say, at that point, I called my boss and got permission from my boss to end both a shift and a career that night. Became kind of an unofficial training point after that. No celebratory Bravo Juliets in the squad car. Why in the ever-loving frick would anyone ever think that was a good idea? How about a little switch up? I fired a guy on my first day. I got a job as a shipping and receiving manager for a small warehouse. I had 3 people working for me. I was told in the morning to keep an eye on one of them because they like to drink on the job. Sure enough, this guy ranked off beer after lunch and was drunk off his butt. The branch manager told me I had to fire him. So I did. He did not take it well. It was one of the most awkward moments of my life. Seems kinda messed up the branch manager didn't do it considering they had worked together for 5+ years and I only knew the poor guy for a few hours. I suspect you were hired, at least in part, specifically so branch manager didn't have to fire his friend himself. Not a manager but an employee. I caught my manager masturbating in the office and he immediately fired me and personally shooed me off the office grounds. Gutted since it was quite a high paying job and let's just say I cannot recover from that incident. What a W. My uncle lost a job 5 minutes in. He drove up and parked outside, went in to do induction and paperwork. Turns out he parked on a hill and forgot to put the handbrake on in his car. It rolled into the boss nice, shiny, 5-day-old Rolls Royce. He was asked to leave pretty fast after that. I should mention it was a driving based job, so showing that he could actually drive and park sensibly was kinda important. Not a manager but an employee who saw it all and was slightly involved. I had a front of house job a few months ago for a brand new performance arts center, and since it was a brand new establishment, they did training in a boardroom with 30+ employees. One dude was just not cooperating. He kept falling asleep, moving around, and he argued about the sexual harassment regulations. The manager said there should not be anything risque posted inside your lockers because it's a unisex locker room and you gotta be respectful. He got upset and started a whole tirade about how it's his locker and no one should get a say on what he puts on or in it. He noticed halfway through training that he was probably on thin ice and tried to save his hide. He also noticed that I would fidget constantly, stand up to use the restroom, or do little hand aerobics with my pen or stare into space for minutes on end. I have ADD and had already told the trainers when I noticed we'd be sitting for 8 hours, so they turned a blind eye to my fidgeting. When they confronted him about his behavior, he dragged me into the issue by saying that if he was to be reprimanded then I should be too for being a distraction to my training. He was fired before his first day of work. Came in for the first day. It was a dress down day and he thought a t-shirt with a close-up of a woman's face with CM dribbling down her chin was appropriate work wear. I had to tell him to leave again. Once had an employee call in sick on their first day because his dog ate all his C's, so he had to take him to the vet. Like, fair enough, my guy. Get your dog sorted out. You don't work here though. Maybe lie next time, or hopefully this is a lie and next time you'll think of a better one. All he had to do was substitute the word C for chocolate and it would have been a much better lie. It was day 9 because I had to write them up 3 times first, but they would not stop falling asleep. In the cube, in one-on-one meetings, and in front of a group of customers even. I tried to probe for medical problems that we could work around if needed, and they assured me they were healthy. Okay then, you just won't stop. Gotta go. I'm not sure that's the case here, but above you there is a very similar story where it turned out the employee had narcolepsy due to a new prescription, like he wasn't even aware he was falling asleep. I managed a property for a very wealthy couple for a few years. The property was huge and there were workers for the landscaping and then others for all the animals. It wasn't on this guy's first day, but maybe first 2 weeks or so, but I caught him smoking outside the barn where the horses were. Smoking wasn't the issue, it was where he smoked that was. He was smoking right beside where all the hay and shavings were kept. When I asked him what the heck he was thinking smoking there, his response was, I thought it was okay because it's not inside the barn. I told him, it's even worse. At least the barn has rubber floor and isn't a massive pile of dry hay and shavings that can easily go up in flames with any spark. Left double quotation mark. The hay and shavings area was attached to the barn and the barn was all wood, so it could have easily been a disaster. I had to let him go. He wasn't the brightest and was often left alone because there was so much work, so he would often be alone and I felt uneasy with that. That being said, we are actually still friends and I helped him get his next job. That being said, we are actually still friends and I helped him get his next job. I am glad this one had a happy ending. Not a manager, but when I worked at a country club in high school, one of the lifeguards got fired after like a week of working there. There was a kid pretty much drowning in the pool and he didn't see it. One of the parents had to jump in and save him. This exact thing happened to my friend at the country club in my town. He was on his phone and didn't see a kid drowning in the lake. Not the first day but the first week. Dude would hit the casinos all night and would be half awake during the day. Fell asleep all the time and we'd frequently find him sleeping in one of the back rooms lying on boxes. Kicked his butt out. If you're working shifts in Vegas, you really can't live that Haru Vegas life. It wasn't the first day but the third, nor was I manager. We had a H junkie get hired as a manager at the Taco Bell I worked at years ago. He came in the third night and spent the first 4 hours nodding off in the office before he decided he should probably do something. He comes out to the line and starts wiping down the food. I'm talking wiping down the cheese with sanitizer. He made it halfway down the line before he registered that we were trying to stop him. Hardware store manager here. We hired a full-time sales associate. Wasn't my first choice as he was so full of himself, but we were running really short and he seemed like he would be a decent employee. Well, first day he comes in and is doing fine. Working on the floor learning the register, and I noticed he had headphones on. Now we do have a no cell phone policy and it's posted around. I'm easygoing, so as long as it's not around customers and isn't frequent, it is what it is. Second day he comes on, same deal, and I pulled him aside and asked him if he could take the headphones off. He complained, but I said that's that and had him go back to work. Hour later he's around with headphones on again and I asked him to take them off again. After he got done complaining, we moved on with our days. Day 3 he comes in with music playing audibly from his phone speaker. I gave him 15-20 minutes and he was down an aisle working with the music playing. I had to pull him aside and explain how we can't have our phones out. We have customers around. He immediately started arguing with me, brought him down to the store manager and we fired him. A guy argued his way out of a decent full-time job SMH. Not a manager, but watched this one happen. Working for a big named soda brand as a order puller. Busy times, we were bringing temp help. Temp agency sent guy over. He knew where he was coming. Was told the basic rules, including nothing competitor related on property. Walks in with a big bottle of competitor's beverage in hand. Warehouse manager literally took one look at him, asked him if temp agency told him it wasn't allowed, and he said, with an attitude, yeah, but I didn't think it really mattered. For the record, the WM did try to give him a chance to remove it, but said it seemed like dude was just using it to get out of actually having to take the job. Dude went down in warehouse history. Go to have that RC Cola. Not a manager, but when I first started working at Walmart, we had a group orientation of about 10 people. There was an older husband and wife duo in my group. The guy kept saying this job was big for him. He'd ask a million questions, wanted to go over stuff that is self-explanatory, and he'd just wear you out by listening to his senseless dribble. It'd go on and on about nothing. We had to take some basic customer service training on computers. You watch a short video and answer 4 or 5 questions. You cannot fail these because they literally give you the answers. I hear this 40-plus-year-old man calling his dad during our break, "Hey dad, things are going good. I just got 100% on the test being 4 or 5 true or false questions." He then asked his dad when is he able to pick them up. I just felt bad for the guy because he didn't really seem all there in the head. The group trainer sits us down and tells us about how the schedule works. This guy starts freaking out. I can't work Wednesdays like he wouldn't stop. He started asking random managers who had nothing to do with scheduling, let alone managing the new hires who aren't even officially in the system yet. He would not let up. Any manager he saw, he'd go up to them and talk their ear off about how he can't work Wednesdays. He pee off the wrong manager because he asked about his schedule 2 or 3 times in the span of 4 hours. The managers pulled him aside, wrote him a check for 4 hours worth of work, then told him to leave. They fired him and his wife quit right after. The sad part is that it seemed like this minimum wage, part-time job at Walmart really mattered a lot to him. I'd hate to imagine how he had to explain what happened to his dad. This one made me feel a bit sad. Hired as our after-hours concierge at 4-star hotel. Began his training with front of house, working with the head bellman that handled intake for our many foreign language speaking guests. His resume boasted proficiency in Italian, French and Spanish. He knew about 6 or 7 phrases in Spanglish. We were hiring for a junior server operator and got an application from a blue suitor that was getting out of the Air Force shortly. He was stationed at the base in town where I had previously done some contract work. Looking over his resume, he had decent skills and training, but claimed that he wrote a piece of software that I had actually written for the Air Force. So we bring him in for an interview and it's quickly apparent that he's vastly overinflated his resume. We save the best for the end. I ask, so this software you wrote, is the SQL password still password? And he give me this look like a dog when he hears a high-pitched noise. How do you know the passwords for that? Because I wrote it. Say hi to Colonel P for me. I'm not getting the job. You are so not hired. I've never seen anyone turn so pale before in my life. A new bartender made a tiny cheeseburger with pickles as a garnish to a Bloody Mary with both red wine and sherry as ingredients. He decided to argue that it's the correct recipe. Bloke ended up confessing that he is high on codeine the whole time. Crazy person. I mean, I wouldn't be mad if my drink came out with a burger as a garnish. In 2008, my husband taught the training class for new salespeople. This new guy was complaining during lunch about this pit bull puppy he just got, how it wasn't mean enough, wouldn't do anything, and that he was gonna leave it on the street. In Baltimore, the guy was let go and we took the puppy, which was in his car. That puppy became the single greatest dog I have ever known. He passed last year, and I still miss him. Not a manager but a co-worker of mine got fired on her first live day on the floor as a server because she didn't notice a table's sushi was never delivered to them. It was sitting in our side station. She dropped the check and the table was P. They told her they never got their sushi and she started describing what it looks like, basically saying you're an idiot to the table. Manager ended up comping their whole bill, which was almost $300. I work at a really posh Asian restaurant in NYC, and she would have kept her job after all this, but turns out she lied to our GM and said the sushi guys never made it. I was still fairly new myself, so I packed the sushi to go and asked my manager what I should do with it. Well, I guess I threw her under the bus unintentionally and brought it to my GM's attention that she lied. When I left the restaurant later, she was crying in our employee smoking section. I felt really awful. She had just moved to NYC about 2 weeks prior and really needed the money. She was happy to throw the sushi guys under the bus, rather than admit to her own mistakes. transfer from another office. Male employee made a derogatory comment to a female employee regarding the hijab she was wearing, and his excuse was it's okay because we're the same religion. Not a manager, but I did floor training at a department store. New employees spent their first week watching videos and doing training exercises. This was her first day on the sales floor. I got an email that they were sending me a new person to train. She isn't in dress code and not wearing a name tag, so at first I didn't realize she was an employee until I saw her behind one of the counters, sleeping on the register, and the HR lady talking to her. HR asked her if she liked to keep her job. The new girl said yes. HR gives her another chance but has the camera guy watching. As soon as the HR lady leaves, the new girl crawls under a table of jeans and goes back to sleep. I'm guessing this was in a blind spot for the camera because she took a nice long nap. At this point I have other work and didn't want to train someone who wasn't going to actually work. I was hoping Sleeping Beauty would wake up and I could show her how to do the new inventory tracking tagging that I was teaching the other employees how to too. No such luck. She did walk up to the counter. I starting to introduce myself. Sleeping Beauty took one of the fancy chocolates we sold, opened it, began eating, walking away without speaking to anyone. The HR lady came back and walked her out as she was throwing the wrapper on the floor. I employed a carer and witnessed her taking and eating food off of the plate of an autistic deaf-mute young person whilst it was in front of him and he was eating. Not fired, but I quit a job on the first day at Food Lion as a grocery stocker at age 16. In the middle of my first shift, manager comes by and tells me a toilet in the back is clogged and overflowing. Go and clog it and mop up. Okay, I said and walked to the back and surveyed the scene and looked around for a plunger. I could not find a plunger. So I walked to the housewares aisle and grabbed a plunger off the rack and headed back to the bathroom. The manager said, "What the heck are you doing?" I said I couldn't find a plunger. He told me that's our merchandise and said go put it back. I said how should I unclog the toilet? He said figure it out, roll up a sleeve. First I laughed and then said, are you serious? You want me to use my bare hand to unclog a toilet? He was serious. I said pee off and left and went to Pizza Hut to meet friends and never went back, and also never got paid for the hours I worked, which is illegal. Bar manager here had a new bartender start before the happy hour rush. He served 2 ladies, turned to his supervisor and proudly said, maybe if the ladies like their cocktails I give them, they will give me some pee, while the ladies and the husband's boyfriends were still easily close enough to hear him. Before we've calmed the guests down, he pisses off 2 waitresses by being generally misogynistic before starting an argument with the female manager. He lasted less than 2 hours. I was the manager of a household in a non-profit that helped recently released convicts and homeless men get back on their feet and back into society. Many stories I could tell, but this one is of a guy who lasted for the shortest time ever. First day was orientation and basic settling in. During this, he made a mess he refused to clean up, stole food from 2 people, including me, and fell asleep in the common area, living room. Second day, first official work day, he does all of 2 hours work and immediately complains about his back and not being able to do more. We give everyone ample warning of the level of physical work required of them ahead of time. During this time, it's discovered he sold most of the medications he had and left a huge mess around his bed. He comes back home, leaves without cleaning up to go shopping. He's brought back by a random woman who found him laying on the sidewalk in front of a church just down the street. Turns out he'd sold his meds to buy booze. He was drunk, bleeding, and clinging to a bag of ramen noodles. We called an ambulance for him, and after he left, packed his belongings and called his social worker to pick them up. Not one of the most ridiculous of situations, but the shortest. I'm very interested in hearing about the more ridiculous situations. Assistant manager of a Goodwill. People can work off community service time at Goodwill, and the local high school has a policy where if someone was caught with tobacco products they had to do 5 hours of community service. Not sure if that was for a first strike or the specifics, but I do know I had a buttload of teenagers working for me. Best job ever, except for the pay. Half my time was spent assigning work to kids, then chain smoking cigs out back and checking up on them and the regular employees every so often. Anyway, this kid came in wearing jeans and a bad attitude. Halfway through his shift, which involved sorting through donated clothes. I notice he's switched pants. He now has on a bright red pair of pants. Neon freaking red. I know they were donated earlier that day because they caught my attention. Asked if he stole them. He denied it, of course, and claimed he had been wearing them all day like I wouldn't have noticed his bright red pants. I punched his little time card thing. Told him to leave. His mom called later to beam me out. He only has 3 days left to get his 10 hours of community service finished. Blah blah blah. Offered to just buy the pants. Told her no, obviously. Not first day, but within the first 2 weeks, I interviewed this elderly lady for a front desk position I had open at the time. Data entry, email, real basic stuff. When I asked about computer experience, she told me that she had been working on them since they first became available to the public and held many positions in tech companies, like Verizon. She also told me that she was proficient with Microsoft applications. I offered her a job, excited about this experience she would bring to the table. Fast forward 1 week and I find out she doesn't even know how to open the internet browser on the computer. She struggled with Microsoft and found it acceptable to do crosswords while dealing with customers. When I spoke with her about these issues, she assured me they would be fixed. In hindsight, I should have walked her out then. After a few days, she had not improved and I decided it was best to cut her loose. When I told her she was being terminated, she immediately questioned everything. For 15 minutes I desperately tried to get her to understand why I need her to at least be able to open Excel on her own. Finally, she froze, and a smile began lurching across her face. If you fire me, that means I get unemployment, right? Correct. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a nice day. Always verify information, folks, and don't be as gullible as me. Not first day but certainly first week. Hired a new cashier who seemed cheery, hardworking and great with customers. Her till was short a total of about £60 from her first couple of shifts combined. This often happened with new staff in training due to keying errors, but it didn't resolve itself, so we kept an eye on her. An assistant manager spotted her, on camera, putting a safe deposit pod full of cash from the till into her handbag instead of into the safe deposit tube. Ridiculous that she thought she'd get away with it, as all the pods were numbered and would have been unaccounted for. I confronted her, did a bag search, found and seized the cash. She tried to claim it must have fallen in. I told her this was clearly bollocks and that she was fired. I then instructed her to pay back the £60 her till was short, or I'd be reporting the incident to the police. She paid up and left. Another employee then told me that she had another part-time job at an old people's care home, so, reasoning that if it were one of my elderly relatives in there, I wouldn't want them being left in the care of a thief. I reported the incident to the police anyway, as well as informing the care home manager too. I gather she lost that job too. The guy vanished from the factory floor on his first day without a word. Came back after half an hour eating an ice cream cone. He had heard the ice cream van in the distance and set out to find it. His standard of work and personal hygiene were both appalling, so we were going to fire him the next day anyway, but he didn't turn up. He called in to say he had been signed off work by the doc because of a bad back. This made getting rid of him a bit more complicated. A week or so later I was filling my car up with petrol and glanced across at the guy at the next pump. It was him and he was refueling his taxi cab. I manage an IT team. Had a 35-year-old lady come work for my team on contract. Basically temp work through an agency. I gave the agency the job description and they were supposed to send me someone who matched. This lady shows up for her first day and talked a good game. But when I show her the workspace and start talking her through how to navigate from one server to another on our system, I find she types like my 70-year-old mother, hunting and pecking so slowly she could probably only do 10 words a minute. She even used caps lock instead of shift for uppercase letters. Literally typed caps lock and A and caps lock, etc. Watching that for 5 minutes made up my mind this person had inflated their resume to get the job and really had no idea what they were doing. Quizzing her a little more in depth about her IT knowledge showed she was in way over her head. I had to tell her it wasn't going to work out because I needed someone to jump in with minimal training and hit the ground running, and that I didn't think she would be able to do that. She immediately started bawling her eyes out, telling me over and over how bad she needed this job until she left. For our technical sales jobs I would give a typing test. I didn't need fast but, well, you could only type so slow and survive. And one guy who was otherwise great promised to come back in 2 weeks able to type with more than 2 fingers. He did, and he got a job. Not a manager but a trainer and witnessed it all. English isn't her first language but communicating with her was difficult. She applied for a role where she interacts the least with people, which would be an overnight baker. Restaurant is closed but she is to prep and bake everything for opening at 5 AM. The first week she was supposed to start her first shift. She called in for the whole week. I don't know the reason. The second week came but she could not show up for the first shift. She showed up for the day after. Her husband dropped her off. He spoke perfect English and we had a talk. He kept asking so many questions such as how many people work overnight, what her main job role is, etc. He really didn't like the fact that she will be working overnight by herself even though there's cameras everywhere and the restaurant is closed. He unwillingly drove off after looking around for a bit. Teached her the basics. What needs to be baked and how many. She took some notes and watched for the most part. The next day we had a complaint written about our restaurant online and the person who wrote it wanted to speak the HR or whoever's higher up than my manager's and general manager's position. Turns out it was the newbie and her husband. They wrote how it was unsafe work conditions for a woman to work alone at night despite the restaurant not being opened and demanded for more people to work during the shift. They also mentioned how it was incredibly difficult duty that was given to her. All she had to do was put pastries in the oven. It's pre-made cooked frozen. She also demanded a different role that we were not hiring for nor do we even have that as an option for. She wanted to just clean, like a janitor etc. I had an employee show up for his first day in ripped jeans and a t-shirt with a naked woman on it. Then got ignorant with me when I told him he couldn't work in that and had to go home and change. As an hour I've had it happen 3 times. 1. Person showed up in pajama pants and a baggy sweater because she said she wanted to be comfortable for orientation. 2. Person made a joke about burning down the brand new building destroying property. 3. Person punched someone else in the arm jokingly. Sir, please be on your best behavior on your first day. Pretend like you're professional and let your wild side out later. Managers want to feel confident that they made the right choice hiring you, and if I don't see that then I can't send you out to the floor. Had a girl that was such a terrible bartender. She told me she had 5 years experience. I asked her to make me a bucket of beer and instead of grabbing bottles to put inside the bucket with ice, started filling up the bucket itself with draft beer. She also didn't know what was in a gin and tonic. Then the worst thing she did was ask all the non-white patrons for cards and tried to make them start tabs BC. She told them she didn't want to risk them running off and stealing from her. Needless to say I removed from her from behind the bar, told her to kick rocks. Little Caesars manager here. I once had an employee who got a face tattoo between the interview and training. Really nice dude, but unfortunately can't accept that for a cashier position. I used to manage a 24-hour mobile bar service that primarily worked Citrons festivals. The deal was free entrance and meals, 8 hours a day on shift, and 16 off to have free time at the party. If it was more than 3 days we would usually give them a full day off to party. We paid them after each shift but split tips at the end of the party. So we mainly hired temporary kids that were too broke to buy tickets and wanted to work their way through the festival. It's safe to say that every graveyard shift some kid would not show up, or come in tripping absolute balls and not be able to function. Drugs were obviously rampant. All they had to do was pretend to be more sober than the managers, or just have the tolerance to do basic functions. Not that difficult you would think. It was always the rookies that failed. I had one idiot pull out his ballsack and offer a customer peanuts. Yeah, he got fired on the spot, and we took his wristband away. Apparently he made it through all 5 days without being busted by security. An employee abandoned their post to go tell someone off. No one was at the front gate for a solid half hour and traffic just rolled on through. Front gate for what? Late to his first shift because he got pulled over and the cops took away his birthday weed and gave him a speeding ticket. I asked to see the ticket. There was not one. Have a good day, sir. Was running a pizza shop years ago and was training a new delivery driver. He entered an address in his phone and it came up as being over an hour away. I told him that was wrong and showed him on a physical map how to find the house. The house was about 20 minutes away in a new development. Quite some time later, well past the time he should have been back, I got an angry call from the customer wondering where his food is. I figured the kid skipped out, so I remade the pizza and delivered it to the customer myself free of charge. An hour after I got back, the customer calls to complain that the kid just tried to deliver a stone cold pizza. About a half hour later, the kid comes in with the pizza and tells me that the customer didn't want it. I asked him where he's been for the last 3 hours and he tells me that the GPS took him to the wrong house. The one I told him not to go to, and it took him a while to figure it out. I told him politely to clock out and never come back. TLDR. New delivery driver relied on his GPS too much and tried to deliver a 3-hour-old pizza after driving in circles. What is the pettiest thing you've seen someone fired for? I used to work at a Chili's restaurant and we used to have to roll silverware after each shift. 50 silverware rolled in napkins. No one liked to do it. Well, one day all of the servers got called into the dry storage area. The manager had found a tray of silverware that someone had hidden so we wouldn't have to roll any. I forget what the ultimatum was, but the manager was going to take it out on all of us if someone didn't confess. Finally, one guy stepped forward. I still don't think he did it, but he took the blame and was promptly fired. I saw someone get fired because they had alcohol at work. It was a gift from a vendor and they just had it in their drawer still sealed. All our sales team would receive wine, beer, liquor as gifts from vendors and some had it displayed in their office. Obviously they just didn't like this person. Sounds like he should have had it displayed. Hiding it in a drawer could be seen as alcoholic behavior. Oh, I have another one. This was a buddy of mine. Incredibly talented software developer, but a bit of a joker. My boss, who was way too serious, did not like him too much because of that. So, we have been asking for a few months for a code repository, because we had to work with shared folders and, as any developer will tell you, that is an absolutely garbage idea. Before a particular part of the project, this buddy of mine took him upon himself to create and configure the repository on a machine that we used for backup. It took him about an hour, which was on his lunch time, not on company time, and from then on, we had a proper development environment with SVN. He was fired for insubordination, for doing something beneficial to the company and crucial to the project, on his own time. Also, as a software engineer, I would love to have co-workers that did that. Please, for the love of God, think for 5 minutes what you are doing will play out for others in a few months' time. My friend got fired after 4 days because he couldn't get the VCR working so his boss's kid could watch a movie in her office. 2 girls on the very low end of the totem pole, like not even making a living wage servicing positions. One is a spiteful bee who barely does her job and takes too many days off. We'll call her Tiffany. One is a really sweet hard worker. We'll call her Mary. Tiffany and her best friend co-worker Stephanie are constantly talking crap about Mary, causing drama that keeps trickling up to middle management. One day, Mary is in the bathroom in a stall and overhears the other 2 talking crap about her behind her back again. She ends up in her manager's office in tears. It goes up the ladder to the owners. The owners decide that this needs to stop, and the best way to do that, they fire Mary. I was stuck in a position sort of similar to this. I used to work in a place where you would get punished or treated badly for speaking up about a problem in the workplace. I'd see people complain in a very civil and fair way, and soon after be given the option to put in their 2 weeks. It made no sense. One of my co-workers went on vacation and her flight back was delayed, making her late for work when she eventually got back. They essentially forced her to put in her 2 weeks on the spot. A week later, when she was too upset to go to her goodbye lunch held by her boss, she was told that day was her last day for not being a team player. My friend was fired on the 2nd week of work because an apartment building in his complex was on fire and he had no way of leaving because of the fire trucks blocking everything. He sent pictures to his boss, and when he showed up, they fired him for being late during the probationary period. Working in the heck known as a call center in West Mifflin, PA, saw one woman working, not feeling well, had no time left, so couldn't call off. Within a few hours, She had used up all of her allotted break time, 15 minutes, and her supervisor wouldn't permit her to leave the floor for the bathroom again, so she threw up all over her computer. She was fired for destruction of company property. True story. I actually was fired yesterday from my pizzeria after 5 years because I asked for 2 days off for a family event and a surprise day with my girlfriend. Obviously just said family event. I came back every summer from school and they would ask me if I could come back and help. I always did because I love the customers. After I was told no, I ended up trying to switch with someone else, like we normally would do. My boss found out, didn't like it, and fired me after 5 years. Kinda dumbfounded to be honest. Guy got fired BC he finally got his degree in engineering and wanted more responsibility and pay. Managers threw him in a role purposely built for him to fail without support and training. They gave him neither. Fired him when crap spiraled out of control. Caused a rift between the team and management. Over half of the team left within a year, including me. I feel for the guy. It's a monumentally crappy feeling when you can tell management is dumping more on you than any one person can handle and just waiting for it to unravel so they can fire you. I work in IT, and I had a contract job that was going to end on Friday. On Thursday evening I decided to clean up my computer profile, transfer relevant documents to our network share, and use Kalena to wipe my internet cookies etc. History. Standard protocol. I pretty much just wanted my PC fresh for the new guy. Boss walked in the room when I walked away for a bathroom break. When I returned to my desk, the laptop was gone. I was told to see the boss about it. He accused me of deleting company data and wiping my computer. He wasn't very tech savvy. I explained to him what I was actually doing and even showed him the important docs on the shared drive which he cared about. He didn't apologize but still insisted he didn't trust me anymore and that I should leave. I happily left smiling. Because the next day Friday I knew I was supposed to train the new guy on becoming the new ServiceNow administrator. My boss forgot this while we discussed and they ended up getting screwed since no knowledge transfer was ever made possible. I heard they paid a lot of money for someone else to come in and basically figure out what I had done. To be fair, they offered me a good amount of money to come back for 2 days of training, but I told them no as I already had another job lined up that following Monday. I hope this story qualifies for this topic, but I thought I'd share it. I know a girl that had this happen. She wrote the code and troubleshooted it and all that IT stuff. They sold the company, but the intellectual property was all hers. They wanted it for a song and she wasn't going to play, so they fired her. Then when the code went wonky, they wanted her to come back and fix it, and she told them to go frick themselves. About 14 years ago, I was working at a local grocery chain when I joined the military. I worked there while awaiting processing. The manager of grocery store had printed the schedule for the week, and I had just gotten my MEPS information and it conflicted with my scheduled time to work. I informed the manager that I couldn't come in as I was going to take my test, do my physical and swear in. So after I came home from that 2-day ordeal, I had a message on my answering machine that I was fired for failing to show up. Fortunately for me, my recruiter was amazing. Called him up and reamed his butt out. Pretty sure they're not even legally allowed to fire you for anything related to the military. I was fired because I was bringing the morale of the team down by taking 1.5-hour lunches every day. Okay, except that I was taking longer lunches to take my son to a medical treatment he was going through at the time. That was well agreed with my boss beforehand. I was coming in an hour earlier every day to compensate, as agreed. However, I'm glad to be honest, my boss was a huge douche with no leadership skills or a clear vision of the project. I was fired from Subway when I was 19. The dressings and sauces come in these big plastic bags, which you cut a small hole in and pour into the bottles. When you're done, you put the bag and its remnants in the fridge for the next fill up. One day before my shift, the owner brought me in the office and him and his brother had 3 half-full bags of dressing. They asked me if I threw them away, instead of putting them back in the fridge. I said no, he no clue who it was tbh. They kept accusing me of it and said we could watch the tapes to find out, so I said fine, watch the tapes. They had no tapes. They kept persisting that I did it, and when I finally just said I don't know who it was, but my shift is starting, they said they needed to know if any more bags were thrown away because they were taking it out of my check. I told them you're not doing that. They told me to leave my shirt and apron and I was being terminated. I went home and told my dad, whose first response was they fished through the trash for these bags and are gonna serve it to the customers, so he called them and threatened to contact the Board of Health. They apologized profusely, and I went the next day and got my last check. I'm 90% sure in Massachusetts to terminate someone you have to hand them their final paycheck at the moment of termination. Either way, frick Subway. I would have called the Board of Health, not called them and threatened to. I was dismissed from a firm after 2 days because a guy who hired me didn't like the hockey team shirt I had on. Ended up taking the firm to court and won a large settlement. Stupid kid. He ended up getting fired. Saw on his LinkedIn page. What team is it? I was once fired from a job because I was asked to create this bull's intake form on Microsoft Word and my boss claimed that I didn't do it. I was genuinely confused, and even though I was 1,000,000% certain that I indeed sent it properly, I said maybe I forgot to attach the file. Boss said we can't have that kind of forgetfulness here and told me to go clean out my desk. As I'm cleaning things out, I open my email, pull up the original sent email that included the file he claimed I never sent, and forwarded the original email and reattached the same file. I included the date and the file name too. To the boss who just fired me, I forgot exactly what I wrote, but it was something along the lines of "Thank you for the opportunity. Here is the file you requested." As I'm cleaning out my desk, the assistant director, who was so busy in his own work that he didn't notice I was being fired at that very moment, confusedly asks Womilkerson, "Why did you send us the same file twice?" I didn't know whether to facepalm or explode in a fit of rage. My ex got fired because of mayonnaise. She was a middle management type at our local NPR station. Had been there for a few years. New station manager got hired, and the guy hated mayonnaise. Viscerally. He banned it from the employee refrigerator. She had a mini fridge in her office, so everybody started storing their mayo in there. He saw it one day during a meeting in her office, started screaming at her, accusing her of belittling him, and fired her on the spot. She was well compensated in arbitration, but she still lost her dream job, all the same. Happened to me in an internship. You talked to my wife yesterday. She said you're cute. Get your stuff and frick off. Well, okay, I'm 16 and your wife is like 50, but more free time until summer holidays end. Not going to argue with you. I had worked as a leasing consultant for a very well-known apartment rental company 12 years ago. My schedule start time changed daily, weekly, and it was not uncommon to work 9 days in a row, so it could be exhausting. The office switched to using a fingerprint punch-in clock when you start your shift, and if you missed it you had to fill out a time card sheet. So I missed a punch-in one morning and filled out a sheet a few days later. I wrote my start time as 8 o'clock, but it was really 9:00, so the assistant manager called me asking about it the day before we put in our time cards for pay, and I said my mistake, it was in fact 9. Let me know if you need me to come into the office and correct it. She said no problem. 2 hours later she calls me again but sounds strange and asks why I wrote down 8 o'clock. I said I was confused because the rest of the week had been 8 o'clock, but again no problem if you need me to correct. I was told no, that is fine. Turns out the manager was on the other line, who hated me, and they tried to get me to say something that would fire me. I did not, however. I was fired for trying to steal 1 hour of pay. After I got fired I filed for unemployment and actually got it, because when the unemployment office called the manager to get her story she never returned the call. Jumped to me at a new job 2 months later and I get a court notice that my old boss and company is taking me to unemployment insurance court because they want to dispute the 1 month I collected unemployment. So I go and they have a corporate lawyer, the HR person, the assistant manager, and manager against me. We sit in front of a judge who hears our case and I provide my side of the story showing how much the start times change, etc. They provide their side and the judge goes okay, so the employee was fired for taking 1 extra hour of pay. I interject and say, Your Honor, I never received the pay for that hour. He asks what do I mean. I tell him the problem was caught before the timesheets went in. He rubs his face and says, "So why are we even here?" My old boss says, "Because he tried to steal an hour." The judge goes, "I heard enough. You will get my judgment via letter. The session is over." He ruled in my favor, so I got to keep that 1 month of pay and the money they wasted on the lawyer, the HR women, and getting people to cover that property while the managers had to go to court probably cost more than the money they were fighting me for equals frick them. As someone who has worked jobs that span hours during first, second and third shift in a single week, and at times within all 3 of those shifts in a single 24-hour period, thank you. I was let go after 2 years for not being a cultural fit for the company. I worked in the accounting department. This came after I had a big deadline coming up and I opted to stay behind and work, rather than going to a co-worker's birthday lunch. My supervisor forced me to go anyway, which took 2 hours and I was unable to meet my deadline. A few weeks later, I transferred someone over to their correct associate in the department and she started screaming at me in front of her supervisor and my supervisor, telling me I wasn't a team player, that I should have taken the call even though it wasn't my region. After that, the same morning the department manager calls me in and says, "It just seems like you put your work before people. Therefore we don't feel like you're a cultural fit." She literally meant because I opted to work as opposed to socializing that I was being let go. Oh, but they still wanted me to stick around to finish the financial quarter to help keep their numbers up. I agreed under the condition I get my full bonus for that quarter. Months after you leave, I just can't figure out why we aren't as profitable as we were before. I got fired once for calling in sick. I called in to tell my boss that I was too sick to work, so she had me calling around to find a replacement. No one answered, but I was sick, so I called her back and told her. She said okay. I show up the next day, I had work and everything is fine. She doesn't say anything. 2 weeks later we get a schedule and I'm not on it. She's not in because she's on vacation, so I ask her assistant. She has no idea and tells me to just wait for the manager to come back. Being a dumb 19-year-old, I do. So another 2 weeks later I'm still not on schedule and she's back but avoiding. Like if I ask for her, no one can find her. Finally she got sick of avoiding me a couple days later and gives me a beating with her and the store manager. I'm fired for no call, no show. I ask her what the frick she's talking about and she says I haven't shown up for a month of work. I tell the store manager that I wasn't scheduled and I could tell it threw him off a bit. But the manager keeps insisting I just didn't show and that I need to sign this paper saying I'm fired for not showing. Ultimately I did because again dumb 19-year-old. I found out later from a friend that worked in a different department she did this because that day I called in sick. She had to work on her day off. She fricked me out of a job because she had to work on her day off as a manager. No way I'm signing that paper, and I'm suing for wrongful termination. Course, we would probably all make that same decision as a 19-year-old. A friend of mine took a bunch of time off because his father was dying of cancer. Him and his father were incredibly close. Our job put him on call indefinitely because he took too much time off. I still get really mad just thinking about it. In the 80s, I worked at a grocery called Schnucks. Management was obsessed with shrink and became crazy with employees eating damages or anything in the bakery. Some guy was fired for eating a few M&Ms from the cookie area. Another was fired for eating an old glazed donut. Instead of quitting with notice to leave for college or whatever, people started eating donuts in front of management and being fired on the spot. Quitting became eating the donut. That's hilarious. I used to work there, although I think it was smoking pot while collecting carts that did me in. Myself, I had worked there for a while, and finally the parent company started moving in and taking over. I was staunchly against the change, since I spent hundreds of hours rebuilding their IT infrastructure from scratch, only to have it ripped out and replaced with stuff I wasn't trained on. The actual infraction was pretty laughable. A boss was with some employees at a bar after work. Apparently she got in a fight with one of the employees, fired her, and confiscated her laptop. She gave it to the other employee and told him to use it to work from home the next day. Of course, that didn't work. He didn't even have rights on the VPN. She called me into her office to berate me because my technology didn't do what she thought it did. I was sick of kowtowing. and just straight up told her she can't reassign hardware without clearing it with me. I was her peer in the org chart. It wasn't insubordinance. Still, I got fired for not fixing a problem I didn't know existed. Had a friend who worked for a steel fabricators as an apprentice. However, he had decided that he was better suited to a future in the Navy. He had been given a start date for basic training, and around 2 months before, he had to hit the emergency stop button on his steel press because it had loaded in the steel incorrectly. That's why the emergency stop button exists. Afterwards, he would have to take some time out to reset the machine and record the incident. Anyway, someone had blabbed to his management that he was leaving to go join the Navy a few months later. So they sacked him for what they found was a disregard for personal safety, because he had to stop his machine. A guy I know worked at a factory and came in while he was off the clock to talk to a co-worker of his. He made the mistake of wearing a wife beater which showed his array of tattoos covering his body, so he got fired the next day for making the company look unprofessional. Not switching gloves when switching from the big burger patties to the small ones. He was fired for cross-contaminating. The patties came from the same manufacturer and packager, same ingredients and everything, just different sizes. That's just a petty manager who would have fired him for something that day. One of my dad's co-workers took a 2-week vacation, scheduled it all out. The company has people bid for their vacation based on seniority every November, so it's not like he just took off at random. When the co-worker didn't come back after the first week, his manager thought he was skipping work and fired him after he didn't show up for 5 days in a row. He showed up when he was actually scheduled to work after his vacation was over, and the manager got a wrist slap, and HR had a nightmare of paperwork to deal with reinstating the guy, who went on to steal a truckload of computers several years later and get fired for real. I wonder if he would have stolen the truck, regardless of whether or not your piece of crap manager fired him. It was my coworker. First, a little background. This place was a crap show. We usually worked an extra 3-5 hours overtime for free a day. We got sick of it and demanded we get proper pay for our work. While administration was working it out, they told us to stop working overtime. They drilled it into our heads. When it's time to leave, leave. Drop what you're doing and go home. Fast forward a week. It was 10 minutes after our shift ends and this one guy walks in and asks for a tour. Now, we never seen this guy before, but we know he doesn't work here. It's a small place. So my co-worker politely declines, explains that we're closed, and offers a tour tomorrow. This guy goes ape crap and storms off. The next day, the head guy in waiting for us to show up, and he fires my co-worker on the spot. Turns out that random guy was a high-paying donor and practically paid for the building. We didn't know that. The guy never said that. From our part, this random guy came in and wanted a tour. Happens more often than you'd think. The co-worker didn't get a chance to explain himself. Just fired. I quit shortly after. Shows up after hours, asks for a tour. Yeah, I'd have thought he was trying to rob the place. I don't know about petty, but this is funny. A guy I worked with applied for a new job while on company time. A few minutes later, he got an out of office reply from the person he sent his resume to. It was our boss, who was out of town but had posted a job opening to eventually replace the guy who was looking for a new job. He should have said, "I'll take it," then stole an identity and live out his life as somebody else. A former boss of mine tried to get me fired when I turned down his sexual advances. I mean, I was flattered, but I'm married, and a man, and not gay. Wow, this was a roller coaster from start to finish. Years ago, I was fired from Pizza Hut. I was a shift manager and there was really bad tornado activity one night. An employee was freaking out because we're from the Midwest and she lost her friend to a tornado recently. I called the store manager and she said to close and go take shelter. Luckily, my house had a basement and was a few blocks away. 20-30 minutes later, sirens stopped and we went back. Trees were uprooted all over the road and glass was broken near the drive-through window. We were soaking wet from the rain. When we got back, online orders had been coming through like crazy and there were only 3 of us. My server was shivering and I told her she could change into basketball shorts that were in her car. Anyone from the Midwest knows after tornadoes everyone goes out to look at the damage. We got slammed, and to make matters worse, a man gave us 10-minute notice that there would be a party of 30 coming. This was a Monday night with 3 employees. We spent hours after close trying to get caught up but finally left. Next day, I get a phone call from the store manager. I come in and she says she had no control over this and she was going to have to let me go because she received 2 calls about a server wearing shorts and not black pants. I explained the situation and she started crying saying it was over her head. Plot twist, I later figured out the real reason I was let go was because I reported an incident to district manager involving an employee throwing a metal crock pot full of ranch at an angry customer. It missed the customer but I had to clean it, and the customer was upset, and the employee was sleeping with the store manager that fired me. Store manager was later terminated for having relations with this employee in the office while on the clock, and also stealing thousands of dollars over the years. My husband was asked to do an interview to go from temp to full-time. A couple of his co-workers got jealous. They trashed his equipment while he was on break. The whole thing was caught on camera, but they still fired him for not being a team player. What the frick? I worked at a bookstore that had a cafe in it. We all got free coffee in the beginning. Then as the company started to fail they took that away and we had to pay like 45 cents and also for the milk in our coffee. The top brass came down hard one day and questioned everyone on if they paid for the milk in their coffee. Everyone didn't but said they did, except one honest fellow. He was an exchange student from China and was the nicest kid you'd ever meet. Worked really hard, and they fired him on the spot for stealing milk. It was over our boss's head and everyone was so upset. A very energetic dude on the service desk decided to show his manager how they get through night shifts when the phone isn't ringing, etc. He was fired the same day. Don't show your boss movies. Glad leadership never saw me playing Battlefield all night to keep my eyes open on night shift. Don't show your boss movies. People like this get fired because they are too stupid to cover their boss's butt. Of course, employees are going to have downtime. But the last thing you want is an employee who advertises his unproductive activities to other people. Today, it's the boss. Tomorrow, the boss's boss. Not cool. What was the I'm fired aren't I moment you experienced or witnessed? I used to work in a call center for a supplemental insurance firm. One day I was making enrollment calls to employees of one of our clients, making sure to leave voicemails if they did not pick up so they can call back. One of these calls kept cutting me off mid-voicemail and prompting to press 1 to leave a voicemail. I assumed their voicemail wasn't actually recording as to why it kept cutting me off. After several attempts on leaving a voicemail, I just exclaimed son of a b and hung up. An hour goes by and the president of my company calls me into his office with the call center manager. Turns out that person's voicemail was recording the entire time and had all of the audio. Even worse, it was the voicemail box of the CEO of our client company that I was calling. He literally played the audio in front of us. It was hard to explain my way out of that one. Holy crap, I just had to deal with this last week. I was a customer, not a worker, so I don't have anything to worry about but some weird butt voicemail that says leave a detailed message and 15 seconds and repeats the message. But if you press 1 to record it just continues reading the message. I tried 3 times and swore and hung up. Whoops. The video of Nintendo of Russia's CEO swearing while not realizing he was on live video. He walked up behind 2 people playing Mario Kart and somehow managed to miss the fact that they were playing Mario Kart competitively, that there was a camera pointed at them, and that multiple people pointed out that they were on live video. So this Mario Kart live stream has the CEO in the background cursing at his employees for being incompetent. In addition, he's apparently really bad at economics and lost the company a lot of money by refusing to stock a game and running out of units to sell, along with being accused of sexual harassment. I have no idea if he was actually fired, though. He hasn't been fired, but Nintendo is doing an investigation. I would not be surprised if they do fire him though. Co-worker while being caught not performing count procedures at a prison. All that was required of the officer was to walk past 84 cells and confirm breathing bodies. Rank comes down to see where count was, finds co-worker sleeping in supply closet, attempts to wake Jigger having already failed. Rank then finds the officer's already completed count sheet in his lap, meaning it was filled out in advance, which is grounds to be immediately fired. Co-worker just hangs his head and starts grabbing his belongings before being escorted out. When I was working day shift behind the bar in an Irish bar restaurant in France, a waitress brought a table of 2 their food. They were having different burgers, and the waitress never verified who was having what before putting the plates down. She went off to take another order, and the first table called her back to say that she put the wrong plates in front of them, and she needed to switch them. She stared at them for a moment. I could see the wheels and her head turning, and she just grabbed the burgers, not the plates, and switched them, looked the customer dead in the eye and said bon appetit and walked off. The place was, and remains, an absolute shitshow as far as treatment of staff goes. Everyone was constantly stressed and on their toes, and the running joke was to tell new staff that if they did something wrong they would be held accountable and punished, and if they didn't do anything wrong, well, they would be punished anyway. All that to say, when she came over to the bar again, all I could think to say to her was that was freaking funny, but you know you're fired, right? I was working as a manager for a parking garage at a hospital in my early 20s. Supervising the valet crew was part of my job. A lot of the valet guys were either 20 somethings without much direction or 60 plus guys working a job in semi-retirement. One of the older fellas mistook the gas pedal for the brake while trying to drive a heavily modified transport bus, modified with lifts, gurney strapping points, etc. He totaled 6 cars before the bus finally came to a stop. I ran towards it thinking he was probably hurt. Before I got there he hopped out of the bus, shook his head and looked at me. So, I'm probably fired, right? I don't remember what the final total was on the insurance claim, but yes, he was fired. I really want to see a video of this. I don't think my imagination is doing it justice at all. I spoke out in a clearing meeting. It's a safe space about all the upper level hiring and blatant lack of promotions coming from a consultant who was handpicking all these new hires. I was fired a couple weeks later for unclear reasons. Eat a dong, go pro. At the time, my job was testing the front end of a large billing database. Manager told me to test on beta. At the time, I thought of beta as a staging environment with mock data, not an alternative front end to our production database, which it never should have been. When I test, I always use obviously fake numbers. So here I am, in a production DB, making bills. And anyway, the next week a real life customer wanted to know why he had a bill for $420.69. Surprisingly, I didn't get fired at that point. I was working a baseball game with a new umpire. First year, fresh 18-year-old. I was on plate so I was chief umpire. Well, the one base coach was going at the new kid non-stop, but I like to let them handle it however they want and talk with them after the game. Anyway, bottom of the 5th the kid had enough. He turned around and just screamed at the coach. "Shut the frick up, I'm sick your crap." The coach went livid and I ran up the line. He starts screaming at me how could I let him talk like that and how he'll never work again. I calm him down and talk to the kid. He's clearly nervous and asks me if I think they'll kick him out for that. I tell him no and to watch me. We walk back to the coach. He's got a smug look on his face. So I tell him, "Now coach, my base umpire here did lose his cool. But to be fair, you've been a complete butthole all game. Now get off my field." Talked with the kid after the game and I explained he's fine. While losing his cool like that isn't the way to handle it, it's not at all uncommon and to just handle it sooner before he boils over. You're the umpire. It's your field. You're in charge. Judge, jury, executioner. Don't use it too much, but never be afraid to use it. I mean at 18 you're still a kid and the idea that you have authority over a coach twice your age is a new concept that they are still timid about using it. Happened to a co-worker of mine. I work at a bagel factory and we have this long bagel stick for picking up multiple bagels and transferring them to the bagel staging area. Well, this co-worker loved bagels and loved scooping bagels with the bagel stick even more, and I think you know where this is heading. So one shift, he takes one bagel stick and duct tapes it to another bagel stick for a super bagel stick and starts sticking it through bagel hole after bagel hole until there's just way too many bagels to handle, and I tried to tell him there were too many bagels on that thing and that a bagel stick can't handle the weight of that many bagels. I was 16 and working in a Chinese restaurant. I went to put soy sauce on a table for 2 customers who were waiting for their food. The sauce slid off my tray and onto the interior of one of the customers' leather jacket. It went everywhere. He was really nice about it, and in the end my boss just made fun of me for about a month. I was working the cash register at a pet store about 2 weeks after starting when a woman came up bawling that her dog just died and she was returning all of these medical supplies, all small but expensive items from the same aisle. Not that I knew that at the time, without a receipt. Every time I tried to say something, she would just bawl harder. I felt terrible, so I returned them, gave cash or a gift or something. A week later, I get called into the office, and my manager informs me that she stole those items and then returned them to make money. Needless to say, I wasn't there long. I hated that place. People get mad when nothing can be done without a receipt, but that's the exact reason why they ask for a receipt. Don't feel bad though, it's easy to do and even retail vets do it. Somewhat related. I was working at my parents' convenience store and a lady came in demanding to see the owners and that she would be having many words with them. All because I made her pay for her gas before she got it. We do this for everyone. So I tell her she can call them from my phone since they were at home. She screams at me some more about seeing them tomorrow in person and leaves. I tell my parents while expecting them to laugh it off. And sure enough their exact words were, "Oh, that lady's a freaking psycho, haha, just ignore her." Never saw that lady again and she never called them. I have to. 1. I worked for a call center doing telemarketing for a few years. Had a call that was a little out of the ordinary. I talked to my supervisor to get permission to proceed with the call given the unique circumstances. Boss gave me the go ahead. I made the sale. 2 days later, I'm called into the manager's office. She's in there with the company legal team. I walked in, she asked me to close the door in a very stern voice. Turns out, my boss was involved in some pretty shady practices, and the client had listened to my call. I was laid off. My boss was terminated and legal action taken against him. 2. When I worked fast food, we had a customer order a chicken sandwich. No mayo. The cook was making it and forgot that it was no mayo. The customer saw him put mayo on it and corrected him, again confirming that it was no mayo. The manager was at the counter with me. The cook was in the back fixing the sandwich when he decided to use a wet cleaning rag to wipe the mayo off the bun and keep making the sandwich. The customer saw this and was rightfully upset. The manager saw what happened and fired the cook on the spot, then took the cook's spot in the kitchen. The very next day, I began training to be a cook. I got a job designing refueling trucks for airports when I was 20. I knew how to draw things and weld a little, but that was it. I made it about 3 years before we got bought by another company with real engineers. I fricked up often. I don't even recall what it was this time. Probably just something not fitting at all. But I got fired. I knew it as soon as they asked me to come to the office. I still see trucks I designed when I travel. It's an odd industry with very little competition. It was like working at Monster Garage. Considering my lack of any qualifications, I think I managed to pull off some crazy crap. I still see trucks I designed when I travel. I'm imagining the car Homer Simpson designs but with a fuel hose. I worked for the property management company I rented from. When I moved out, they thanked me for renewing my lease and asked me to leave an anonymous review. I did, and I expressed several complaints I had as a renter. Massive urine stain, broken light switches, absurd mandatory $30 filter delivery program that delivered the wrong size of filter, and unresponsive property manager who addressed none of these issues all year, etc. After submitting my anonymous review, my boss emailed me asking me if I left the review. It had my address, name, phone number, and email listed. I was amazed when I wasn't fired right then and there. I trained the new guy 3 months later and was let go when I finished training him. I now make $6 more an hour and never have to use my time off pay to fill in the shortage of hours. I managed a homeless shelter and had an employee leave after about 30 minutes of her shift. She said she needed to get something from her car. The primary phone we used for the shelter was a cell phone. It helped with folks who didn't have minutes to call or service but could text with Wi-Fi, and she left with it. She was gone for several hours and wouldn't answer the phone. I remembered that we had location tracking on the phone and I used it to find that she was a block away from the shelter. I was so frustrated with her at this point that I walked down there. I found her high as a kite on M and she had completely forgotten that she was supposed to be at work. I told her that she had the phone and we needed it and to call me the next day. The next day, she showed up for her shift and I pulled her into my office. I had already spoken to HR and she was definitely terminated. I asked if she could tell me what happened the day before and she pretended to not know what I was talking about. We had cameras that showed her leaving 30 minutes into her shift. 3 other employees and myself who were there and would attest that she was not, and the phone tracking. She sat there and straight up lied to me saying that she was there on shift and nothing was out of the ordinary. I freaking wish that she would have just said, "I'm fired, aren't I?" My boss made a terrorist joke about me and I said, "At least I get 72 wives instead of losing one to some butthole I don't even know." He was going through a divorce. I still think it was worth it. If you're going to make an edgy joke, you should be ready to receive one back. I worked as a shift manager at an auto parts store. Long story short, I reported a guy distributing drugs from the store to the store manager and police. 2 days later an auditor came in from regional and started accusing me of stealing and I was so confused, and next thing I know I'm resigning under duress for something I never did. Turns out everyone was in on it and I ruined their gig. I was young and raised in a pretty sheltered home, so I had always assumed adults had integrity. This was my second job. I was 19, working as a housekeeper in a resort for about 3 months. It was one of the last rooms we had to clean for the day and it was completely trashed. Was so tired and overwhelmed with everything I forgot to clean the rubbish bins. My manager came through and double checked everything and found what I had forgotten and proceeded to give me the longest lecture of my life. But that's not what got me fired. She pinned a bunch of her frick ups on me. Like how once I was cleaning a room with her and she didn't check a blanket folded up in a cupboard because nobody uses them anyway and the next guest found a used condom in it. Or how she completely missed a room when assigning us ours and it never got cleaned. Horrid old cow. At my last firm, I made a mistake that basically cost $30k. The partner chewed me out a bit and showed me how I had fricked up, but then at the end, he just said, "Now I bet you'll never make that mistake again." Basically he figured that they taught me a very expensive lesson. Might as well get their money's worth. Well, I've been forgetting to do thank you notes for new clients for the past 2 months, so I might be in it now. I still have 4 hours in the day, so we'll see Mayo. A coworker accidentally dropped a database table for a major multi-million-dollar client. There is no part of the job where we'd ever need to use a drop command, but he did it all the same. Imagine going to a company like Amazon and just wrecking their site for a few hours. That's big money. Fortunately for him, he was just moved to customer relations since everyone loved him even if he was a dum-dum. Fortunately for us, I created a backup of the database before he started because I didn't have the highest confidence in him, which is also probably why I'm now a manager. Haha. I was the third key who locked up for the night at a coffee shop. I'd cleaned the place and put away this crock pot on top of the freezer for the night. One night, the power cord from the crock pot shut in the freezer door when I left. The door popped open during the night and all its contents melted out on the floor. I made a change to our McAfee account where I applied the EEPC, endpoint encryption, tag to all computers that didn't have it. I had been forgetting to do so as I was going and wanted to cover my tracks. 2 weeks later my boss asked who was making changes, and when I confessed she said, "Congratulations, you just encrypted our SQL servers." Fuck me. I went over someone's head and evacuated a casino due to a bomb threat. I got the call from the police saying they are on the way due to a bomb threat and they want everyone outside now. In less than 30 seconds they were on site. I called security and told them what was going on and we evacuated the casino for over 4 hours while the cops looked for a bomb. I get a call from the general manager who was pissed off that I gave the order to evacuate rather than the duty manager. He said that I had no right to do that and there are people being woken up all over the country from media relations to investors regarding this incident. I explained to him that at the end of the day the police made the call to have the building evacuated and if I didn't give the order the on-duty manager would have and if he didn't there would be cops coming in and ordering everyone out. I got hauled into the office a few days later. I was asked why I didn't read the manual on bomb threats when it happened. I just can't believe the level of stupidity armchair quarterbacks have sometimes. I was 15 or 16 coming in for my third ever shift at a pizza joint. I was stoned in the way you can only be as a 10th grader, where you're thinking that you're sly but everyone can tell because you smell like weed, cheap body spray and have Cheeto dust around your mouth. I smoked a blunt like 10 minutes before coming in, and as I started putting my gloves on my manager came up and said, "Hey man, go talk to F in the back. He needs to give you your new hire drug test." I was freaking out. I had just gotten my first car and needed the money so I started sweating it thinking I was gonna get booted. Right as I went to knock on the owner's office door and accept my fate, everyone started laughing at me and telling me it was a joke. That's how I found out all my co-workers smoked weed. Happened about 20 minutes ago. I messaged our CEO saying that our benefits are crap. Swore I'd be gone. He agreed and told me to look into it more with HR. Go figure. My boss hadn't paid me for over 2 months, so at one point I demanded the money to be on my bank account by the next day, or else I'd sue them. I received my final pay the next day and I got rid of that awful job at the same time. You shouldn't have told them before suing. Could have filed them over and won more money at the same time. She accidentally started to delete the law firm's entire database and didn't tell anyone about it. What got her fired is that she wouldn't fully say what happened. Even if her story was 100% true, there's no way of fully believing her because she constantly makes up excuses for when she messes up. Nothing was ever her fault. I really feel bad, but apparently our boss had other issues with her, so this just made him not want her here anymore. This happened yesterday and we have 2 people interviewing today. So this was back in the mid-90s when I was the IT support engineer for a plastic molding firm. Some of our designers were having issues with the CAD machines, SGIRX workstations, so we were sent some replacement memory, 32 MB, really expensive server class memory, to replace the existing memory. The Wang engineer turned up a few days later to fit the replacement memory, and afterwards, I cleaned up the remaining crap and tossed the empty boxes into the trash compactor. A few days later, I get a call from Wang reminding me to return the removed memory modules. At which point I am frantically contacting the engineer to confirm that he hadn't taken the modules with him when he left. I was so sure I had just lost $$ worth of memory, and I was going to be fired. I'm pretty sure I was close to throwing up. I found the site manager, checked and discovered that the compactor had not been emptied, so we called up the disposal firm. I got a lift in the disposal truck out to landfill, and the compactor was emptied out on a flat area. I then spent 2 hours clambering around in my nice office work clothes looking for a ruby in a mountain of rocks, or maybe a cardboard box in a big pile of other cardboard boxes and other crap, and I found it. I went back to work, shoved the memory into a compact desktop and ran the BIOS memory checker until I was sure that it was good, and dispatched it back to Wang. And I never binned a box without checking to see if it was actually empty again. Right after uni I worked at a dental surgery as a receptionist. Pay was bad. Patients were always rude etc etc. One of my colleagues, we'll call her dumbfuck, was a trainee dental nurse but also did shifts on the reception desk. It was a Monday and dumbfuck strolled in 15 minutes late. She overslept because she had come back really late from a festival the night before. Not a big deal, it happens. But she seemed to be still steaming drunk from the weekend. Normally she would have been sent straight home, but there was no management in the morning for a few hours so it kind of went unnoticed. But the more and more dumbfuck was interacting with the patients, it became apparent that she wasn't drunk, but rather very high, probably ketamine. She kept shoving her entire fist in her mouth to itch it because it was too dry and was starting to creep out the patients. 3 of them actually asked me if she was okay, because her behavior was so strange. Management arrived, Quickly noticed dumbfuck was out of her mind and dragged her into the back office to have it out with her. Apparently she kept trying to say it was her medication, but the area manager demanded to see a prescription, when she obviously couldn't provide one, even when she was offered a lift to her GP surgery to get one printed as evidence. She came clean that she was high and was fired immediately. Apparently being a dental nurse was her dream job, but obviously she couldn't have cared that much. Imagine if it was a nursing shift she had turned up for. Moral of the story: call in sick if you're still high on drugs. TLDR: idiot strolled into work at a dental surgery while still high on drugs, got sacked. I did a dead-on impression of the boss's 12-year-old son. The boss was an uptight, wealthy, multiple business owner. I worked at one of his 2-car dealerships. This second dealership was about 2 miles away and we all talked on the phone regularly. This is how my impression was discovered. So, one afternoon, the phone rings and it's the parts manager at the other dealer. He has me on speaker and tells me who's there listening. He begs me to do the impression. I tell him that it might not be a good idea, but he assures me that it's only 3 of them listening and that the owner isn't around. So, knowing I was playing with fire, I launch into a freeform impression. I hit all of the stuff that this kid goes on and about. I even imitate the kid talking to his dad, the owner, and I can hear screaming laughter on the other end. I even hear one dude gagging because he's laughing so hard. I freaking nail it. Then the other end of the phone goes quiet. I can still hear a few chuckles and people trying to recover. Then, in a clear and unmistakable voice, I hear the owner clearly telling me that he will call me later. I felt my whole insides drop. My legs went completely numb. Instantly, my hands start shaking and they go cold. I hang the phone up and quietly wait for the phone to ring. About 15 minutes later, it rings. Someone else answers it and puts the call on hold. I hear the speaker crackle. Odd craving. Dan on line 2. I'm fricked. I walk out into the showroom and look for the most isolated phone, and I pick it up. Do you know what it's like having a kid with special needs? Dan asks. This takes me aback as his kid is quite smart and in no way has any special needs. I stammer. Then Dan says, just kidding. Great impression. We were in a Wawa around 10 PM. For those of you not blessed to have Wawa in your state, it's like a combination Subway, gas station, bodega, and coffee shop. We were standing in line behind a guy who was taking a while to pay, so I left my fiancé there and walked a whole 5 feet away to return the candy bar I didn't want to the stand where I'd gotten it. In that time the guy had finished his purchase, and my fiancé turned around to look for me before stepping up to the register. We're talking, all told, maybe a couple second delay between the end of the purchase and when the woman who had been behind us in line stomped around my fiancé and cut in line ahead of him. I only caught her getting in front of him, so I asked my fiancé, who makes laid back people look uptight, what had happened. I thought maybe he let her go ahead or something. He said she just got in front of him when he didn't immediately put his stuff at the register. So I asked what the heck she was doing. She turned around and got crappy with me and said that we were taking too long to move the line up, because a whole few seconds with only her in line behind us was just intolerable, apparently. I asked if she'd ever been to kindergarten and learned how to wait in line. She ignored me. I continued being an butt to her, and she turned around and told me to shut the frick up. The thing was when she turned I caught her Wawa name tag. I immediately went and got the manager and the woman hightailed it out of the store. The next morning I got a call from the DM or regional manager or something and he was incredibly apologetic and promised me that he had reviewed what happened and she was gone as of that day. But that couple of seconds when she turned around to look at me and I looked down at her name tag, you could see the frick in her eyes and it was glorious. I was working retail as assistant manager and the very odd time I'd be late, maybe 5 minutes, but on the wrong morning my manager would kill me. One Saturday night anyway, went out with friends and got pee and a few came back to my apartment. Got to sleep about 7, work at 11 the next day, shop opens at 12. I wake up the next day at about 12:30 to numerous missed calls and texts from 2 of the guys that worked there. I slept in and the shop was meant to be opened half an hour ago. When I drove in and got there, they were sitting in the ground outside the shop with shoppers passing them. I'm thinking, could ye not have sat at a freaking coffee shop 20 feet away? It was almost 1 at the point. I thought I was done. My boss would find out. Why weren't the tills opened at 12? No sales put through until after 1. No one clocked in until 1. I was sure I was done. Somehow he didn't find out and he's still a good friend to this day. But I really fricked up and don't know how I got away with it. Well, if you are good at your job, I doubt one incident is enough to warrant throwing away all the good you do. I got dropped off at work one morning when I was the only one there, and everyone assumed we were closed because the parking lot was empty, and I got yelled at by my manager because I was irresponsible for not driving to work myself. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.